Hi guys, welcome back to Tigers Unleashed. We're your host Hannah,
I'm Elena.
And I'm Abby.
and today we'll be talking to Carson Riley, a sports information director for Clemson Gymnastics, men's soccer, and women's tennis.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2. Today we have Carson Riley with us, and I'll have her introduce herself a little bit further.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Elena, for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. Like Elena said, my name is Carson Riley, and I'm in my second year of my master's here at Clemson University. Currently, I am what's considered an sports information director with the Clemson Athletic Department. And what that means is that I'm working with another full-time staff member and overseeing the day-to-day responsibilities for the communications of Clemson Athletics men's soccer program, gymnastics program, and women's tennis program. I'm really honored to be doing this. This has been a dream of mine for a really long time, and I'm just out here accomplishing my goals, and it's been really, really fun. Like I said, I'm in my second year of my master's, and so what that means is Clemson is helping pay for my degree while working pretty much a full-time job here at the athletic department. Some of my day-to-day responsibilities include going to practice, traveling with the team, upkeeping our record book for tennis specifically. And then my favorite part is the social media management. So, a large role that I take on when it comes to men's soccer and gymnastics specifically is the social media management. And like I said, that's my absolute favorite part. And so often I'm going through a content calendar of things that I've put together for the week and then also preparing for the next week and the weeks after. So a lot of times when people ask me the difference between what I'm doing and, like being a social media manager for like an influencer, I think it's really, really interesting to get to tell people about what I do. Um, in the sense that a lot of times being an influencer, you don't have the big events all the time. So you're trying to fill in the content between the brand deals that you're getting, the sponsored content that you're posting, and XYZ. For sports, it's so different because our bread and butter is sporting events. So especially with teams that have lots of sporting events in their calendar, you are getting all the content. And that's stuff that you can utilize throughout the rest of your 365-day content calendar. And so I just really enjoy that. Right now, I'm smack dab in the middle of women's tennis and gymnastics season, and then I'm in off season for men's soccer. And so, even though men's soccer's off season, on Saturday I went with the team to Atlanta. They competed against Atlanta United second team, and so got to go with them. Took photos, and we had a video student with us, and so we were able to capture lots of content. It was a closed match, so we didn't really do a whole lot of promoting the actual gameplay, more so just the experience that the student athletes received because it's just something that's really, really beneficial for them and the program itself. Other than that, gymnastics is in season, so we just had a really big weekend with our youth meet. And so a lot of what went into this past weekend was promoting the event, making sure we're getting ticket sales, people knowing what's going on, and just getting out the promotion of what is actually happening at the event. So we had free sunglasses for all the students that were in attendance, and so it was just really cool. Tennis was on the road, and so even though they're on the road, I'm still working, and so it's really interesting, and just a little bit of what my day-to-day life looks like. I know y'all had a couple of questions for me, so Elena, you can go ahead and not kick that off.
Well, thank you so much. That was really awesome. Um, I'm just more curious about like who exactly you work with specifically in the management process. Like I know you work closely with like the videographers and the photographers to plan that content that you're posting, but are there people more on the management side that you work with?
So, to give you a better understanding, I'm meeting with my teams weekly. So, on a weekly basis, I meet with my gymnastic and women's tennis staff. And so, what that looks like is for myself, I'm planning a 2 week calendar. So I'm looking at what is directly coming in the week ahead, and then also what are things that we need to plan for the week after, so that I'm never behind. I'm always caught up, and I'm always planning for that. Those last minute asks, the Leo reveals, the little things that kind of get caught up. And so when that happens, I'm meeting with my staff, and then bringing whatever is happening in that meeting to my pod meetings with my students who I utilize for pretty much everything. So for me, that's our communication students. I have two students for every sport. And then I also have two students for video students for every sport. So for gymnastics example, I meet with my staff on Mondays, and then on Tuesdays I meet with my student pod. Usually that includes one of my marketing adjacent. His name's Eddie's awesome, and so he usually pops over whenever we have quick questions about promotions and stuff like that. But a lot of that time is going into planning the week ahead, the meet ahead, and so talking through deliverables that wise. And making sure that everyone knows what's happening in meet. If there's somebody we're promoting or something specific that's happening that I think could be really great content and just overall really healthy for our brand. That's whenever I'll go through that with my students. And then additionally, we'll also talk about our bigger deliverables. So oftentimes we have National Girls and Women's Sports Day videos coming out, Black History Month, Women's History Month. With tennis, we're in our 50th anniversary. So working through I call larger ticket item projects. And those are projects that I've given to our students sometimes weeks, months in advance, and let them know, this is what's going to be coming, but you're also going to have XYZ other deliverables you're going to have to fulfill. So start working on it now. Oftentimes I kind of feel like a teacher, like a TA, whenever a TA is like, hey, just so you know, we're going to have this massive project, but you also have all these other little assignments. It's kind of essentially what I'm doing on a weekly basis with my students. And so I always like to get feedback from my students. I never want to overwhelm them. I know it can be really stressful having to manage both a full-time class schedule and oftentimes they're traveling with our sports. And so it just takes a really big toll. I was in that intern role just 2 years ago. And so I completely understand that, we have lives outside of this and our students have their own lives and they have their own hobbies. And so they deserve to enjoy their life. And I know that sports takes up a large chunk of that. And so always just trying to stay really upfront and communicative with my students and making sure that they're just knowing what's going on. And that's been, I think, really beneficial these past couple of months, especially with gymnastics and tennis. It's just a constant grind. And so those are my student counterparts. But other than that, I work with a full-time staff member. Her name's Chandler, and she's kind of she's like primary SID and I'm secondary. And the reason being that she is I call the adult on it. And so she just kind of oversees everything and helps a lot with the stat keeping, particularly for gymnastics. But I really, really handle the social media, but we really work as a team together. And then the other people I work with are our full graphic design department. And so we have a full-time graphic designer named Blaze. He's really awesome. He's so great about being able to fulfill any requests that we make. And he has a lot of students that he works with that are assigned to different sports. And so it's really easy to, contact him, say, Blaze, this is what's coming up. Here's all the information you'll need. Here's the due date. Let me know if you have any more questions. And as long as I give him a who, what, when, where, by when, I usually always get it. And it always looks so awesome. And our graphic design team just really kills it. And so it's been really fun. This year, Clemson Athletics has taken on a different kind of structure with how we utilize students. And then with the formation of ventures, we kind of just have shifted a little bit in terms of personnel and stuff like that. And so it's been really, we've been utilizing students a lot. And so it's been a little bit of a learning curve for, I know myself, but the other GAs and the other full-time staff members, but it's been really fun to get to utilize them. And so, yeah.
Okay. Did it disconnect for everybody else too? Okay.
No, just
Oh, just me?
you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wait, I'm sorry, guys. There's all this construction happening over there. So I tried moving further and then it just fully disconnected and I was like, okay, great. So I
No, it's okay.
apologize.
No,
All
it's
right.
all good.
Wait, Hannah, do you want to just ask the question again? And we'll just,
Sure. Does that work for you,
okay.
Carson?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. We can maybe make it a little bit shorter too. I'm sorry, I'm a rambler.
No, we
No, it's
love it.
okay.
No, it's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah,
We love
we
that. We
need
love it.
content.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help.
You mentioned earlier you get a lot of good content in the season and you carry that into the off season. But how do you keep the content engaging in the off season when things start to get slim if you run out of stuff from the season?
So I think a lot of that has to do with how you plan in the upfront. Oftentimes you will hear people talk about a 365 calendar and the things that your staff is looking for. And so for me, I've been with my staffs for 2 years now, and so I know what they want, I know what they like, I know what they need. And so I think this year I kind of really hit the ground running. And so, for example, men's soccer, all of our sports go through a media day, but with men's soccer, specifically is where I was able to implement this the most. We go through a marketing station because we have what's called a video board out at the soccer. So we're able to play promotional stuff and stuff like that. And so with that, I was able to have some of our student athletes discuss the facilities and the resources that are provided to student athletes here at Clemson. And oftentimes, if you're kind of in doubt of what to post, the best things to post is about the program and about the facilities and about the school. And I think the off season is a really good time. I mean, the coaching staffs are out recruiting, and so you're wanting to also fill that up on the social end. And so oftentimes, a coaching staff's going to go out and recruit, and the student's going to go and look for their social media. And what do you know? On the social media, they're talking about we have the best and newest facilities. We have the athlete recovery center up at the women's sports expansion up top near the lake. And so those are just really, really great resources and facilities that we can utilize. And it's what I call evergreen pieces. And so that's just stuff that you will always be able to get. And that's stuff that I'm always looking for my students to be able to gather during the season, whenever we're talking about atmosphere type stuff and about game days and how people are enjoying it. I think it's really fun to always be able to utilize that. That helps me in my promotion for next year events whenever we're going to bring back military appreciation days, pink meets, whatever else. It always will be able to be utilized. And just making sure that you understand that the content that you're asking someone to make is something that can be used in the off season for next year promotion, literally any little thing. And it's so important to understand that. And so, yeah.
I just want to
Speaking
add
of
on
the
to
off
that.
season, oh,
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna add on to it because I think this is like just cool, like to tie it back into what we were talking about in class. But this like evergreen content that you're talking about, I feel like helps like fans and students kind of build this like parasocial relationship with the athletes because
Mhm.
these videos aren't necessarily just like game points or like winning like the best plays at the game. It's like involving the fans and kind of allowing them and even just like people students that they're trying to recruit to see what life is like as an athlete. So like those moments that you don't
Yeah.
see on the TV, you get to see them on the off season, you get to see their personality come out a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I think it helps both for the programs to like initiate that recruiting process, but also for fans and students to kind of see athletes in a different light, which I think is really awesome.
Yes, I mean, I can add on to that a little bit more, but that's exactly right. Like when I'm specifically going into these pod meetings with my students that I'm talking about that I meet with weekly, we're talking about content that is going to help promote and protect the brand, right? Like that's your baseline for everything when you're putting out on social media. You want to promote and protect and sometimes get butts and seats. Like that's like the tenet of sports social media. Like that is why we do what we do. And so when you're creating these evergreen pieces and going into a weekend, like for instance, we just got done with our youth meet weekend, and my boss's daughter is a really big gymnast, and we mic'd her up for the meet. And so, like, this is content where other little kids that are looking for gymnastics content and they're looking to connect with it, they're seeing this and they're like, oh, that could be me one day. And you know what? A kid could watch that and be like, Mom, let's go to the next meet. And we have a sold out crowd. Like those are things that people will can see themselves in. And like you can see yourself being there in the crowd of 6,000 people, 8,000, you know what I mean? Like you can see yourself there. And so maybe it leads to somebody purchasing a season ticket, a single meet ticket, whatever else. But yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Abby, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was just on top of like, you're talking about the off season. I was just like wondering like if you would say the workload like in the off season is significantly less, or are you still like posting like if it was in season?
I would say that it definitely is very different. So it's not that you can't say the same for like everyone who manages their social media. Like it's just different for everyone. For me, a rule of thumb I kind of try to live by is to, especially for my off-season teams, like I'm not able to be there as much as I would want to be. Um, I think it's I think you can really grow a brand in the off season because you're able to have the funny, silly, goofy moments where you're building a team and showcasing personalities and new people and transfers in and your new students who are coming in the spring. Like it's a really, really great time to do that. But for me, sometimes I just can't get around to it. So like when you're talking about workload, like I'm traveling pretty much every weekend with gymnastics. I have multiple matches for tennis a weekend, and it's just sometimes it's a little bit draining. So I have to create that delineation for myself and kind of set aside a time for myself. So something that I try to do is at least post like every other day for my off-season accounts, and every couple of days. But sometimes it's just not feasible. And that's just kind of part of it, and just making sure you have content that's going to keep pushing the agenda, which is to promote and protect. And so it's a personal choice for everyone, but for me, I kind of need to have that delineation and give myself some peace a little bit because this job is can and is overwhelming at times.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as crisis communication goes, that's another big theme we have this week. How do you handle situations that may not be ideal? I don't know if you've handled anything such as like COVID is obviously a big one in recent years. But things like that, and also if a team's just doing bad on a more basic level, that can happen a lot more. How do you handle that on social media?
So I think that crisis communication is a really, really tough thing to talk about. A large part of crisis communication is making sure you are um, being like an active like social media listener. And so like people make fun of me because I'm like so chronically online, but unfortunately like I have to be in order to be a good social media listener and like understand the landscape of college athletics, what's being said about my team, what's being not being said about my team or teams. And so um kind of just being actively like on your accounts is really, really important. I've never had to deal with crisis communications, and I'm not saying I never will, but there have been like instances around the athletic department, and I won't necessarily speak on those, but I will say, whenever they do happen, I have in the past gone to my direct supervisor and talked to him about like his decision making, being like the leader of the communications department here at Clemson, and asking him about like how did you decide to make this decision? Like what went into you making this decision? Who did you contact first? How did you go about this? Like what was your role in this? Because I haven't had to do that. And if I do, I would just go to my boss anyways, because as the director, like they're the ones you have to contact so that they can be aware from a university standpoint, making our athletic director aware, XYZ. And so it's just always making sure as soon as you see something, say something. Like it can be the smallest thing, but like you would be shocked at like, I see things and it's like, you kind of have to get a feel of like, is this a like immediate problem? Like I need to pick up my phone at 9 p.m. and call my boss on a Tuesday night, or is this a, hey, let me stop by his office tomorrow and just mention that, hey, I just saw this, it was a little weird, just wanted to let you know. And so making that decision can sometimes be tough, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I know you had a second part to that question. You were, um, talked about crisis communication. And then what was your other part of the question, Hannah?
Just if a team's doing bad, is there anything you do there to kind of engage people when people are upset that their team isn't performing well?
So that's a little tough. I will say that I think this kind of comes from a like I don't know how to describe it, but like I said, every social media manager is different in how they handle pretty much everything across the board. And so there's not a right way or a wrong way. It's just sometimes you do what you feel is best based off of a coaching staff, like how you know your coaching staff. Like if you're putting something out that you know you're gonna get a call about later, like you just know you're not gonna do that. A tenet of mine is like never be cocky on social media. That's like a big thing I have to really communicate with our students if they're helping me with social media. It's like never want to be cocky. You never want to get a call from a staff that's saying, why in the world am I getting a call about this post? What does this mean? Some of our staffs, they don't understand trends or they don't understand some things, and nothing sucks more than getting a call from a coaching staff. It's like, why in the world would you post that? And so a lot of that does center around whenever, we lose a really tough match or we lose a tough game or whatever else. And I think that it's really important how you present the information. From a social media management standpoint of sports, like one of the main functions is talking about like what actually happens in the game. That's just part of it. You don't have to talk about the poor performance, but I do think it's important to talk about the final score. And I think it just depends on how you present the information. Because like on Instagram, things live forever. You can scroll as far back and you can find that post and people will still go to that. No, I can't talk about that. Like people will sometimes when you don't post the final score, I think that that can sometimes lead to egging on a situation. And so I think it really just depends. And what I'm trying to say is that it's always important to post a final score, but the way you deliver content, I think, can set you apart and help mitigate some of the backlash and the heartache that some of your student athletes see. Again, like one of the tenets of social media management is protecting, right? And so sometimes you just really want to protect your student athletes from sometimes people just say mean things. And so just coming with that level of understanding and making sure your student athletes are protected and the brand is protected, I think is really important, especially when a team isn't performing up to their standards. And these are student athletes who are 18, 19, 20 years old and like they're just kids too and they're learning for the first time. And so I think being really important and reminding people of that is also important.
I also think it's like to add on to that, it's very like powerful to see like our athletics take pride even in losses and then seeing them persevere later on and seeing them like, maybe they didn't have a good start to the season, but you're following along to the story that we're telling, and they didn't have a great start, but now they
Right.
are. And you can feel and like I almost think it makes the wins a little bit more like powerful too because you knew about their lower points and now you see them work to succeed and work to get those wins after not having
Right.
up to their standards like you said. So I think it's
Right.
cool that you guys don't just hide away and pretend like it doesn't happen because it's part of the game. It just it's part of life, it's part of athletics, it's part of everything. And I think it's cool to
Yeah.
see you guys take that, tell the story, protect the athletes in the process of it, but also understand that it all matters in sports and it's just part of the game.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
well,
sure.
thank you so much for sharing everything. That was very, very awesome and very cool to just tie it back into what we're learning as well. But yeah, if anybody else has anything to add, but I feel like that was all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much
so
for your
much.
time.
Of course, I hope I didn't speak too long and I hope
No, that
y'all
was perfect.
No, you're
enjoyed that.
perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Well, we'll
you.
keep in touch, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you'll have really great days.
Thank you,
You
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 too.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 We're so grateful that Carson took the time to speak with us. We're just going to tie it back a little bit into class and what we learned. And she shared a lot of valuable information, specifically on parasocial relationships and crisis communication, and just what her day to day looks like, off season, in season, all of that stuff. So, yeah.
I really liked one of her points was I liked how she compared it what she does to what like an influencer does. Like how an
Yeah.
influencer will be invited to like all these like PR events and like has to promote a product and stuff. But like for her and stuff, it's like her like events are all these games that she has to go to. So I just thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting, that
And I think,
comparison.
and I think it was cool to hear how she's like, the whole like protecting the athlete and like that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
almost like all of her athletes are like her influencers that she's managing
Hmm.
because she's trying to like keep up their image. Whether and if they're doing great, then in the season, then like awesome, that's the image that she's upkeeping. But also if they're not having a season up to their standard, then like she has to protect the image of like them in that process as well. And then I also like that she talked about like in the sense of like protecting the athletes, like when posting losses and stuff, like making sure that like, yeah, they're sharing it, but they're also keeping in mind that like these student athletes are people too. And the internet is, a very hateful
Yeah.
place at times and being like kind of putting herself in the mindset of like, okay, if I post this, like what's the reaction gonna be? Or if I don't post this, what's the reaction gonna be? And kind of mitigating like the hate to the athlete so it doesn't happen. And if it does happen, maybe not directly to the athlete and to like the public accounts that like they aren't as directly tied to, I guess. Um, but I think it's interesting because you think of that, like obviously you see hate comments all the time, but like kind of putting yourself into the mindset of like the athlete's mental health and like obviously they're just as unhappy as anybody else would be after a loss. And just kind of respecting their boundaries and their emotions and stuff like that. No, I don't know. I think she just like overall, it was just like very informational. And I know what the job of an SID is, of course, but like hearing her like thought process, I guess, was very interesting. Because like okay, yeah, obviously they're not gonna post things that will embarrass the team or the athletes, but like hearing the way that she like spoke about it and was like, this is how we're planning these
Yeah.
events and these like games, and we have, for gymnastics, they have a lot of themes, like the pink meet or the military appreciation thing, and like taking advantage of like those events and like those themes, I guess, and like how they can work to get people at those games. So I thought that was interesting.
I think something she said without saying was how important empathy is to the role and being an
Mm,
SID. Like we were talking about earlier, she puts a lot of emphasis on protecting the athletes, protecting people's personalities, making sure, as you were said, mentioning that the hate comments don't get to them and stuff. And I feel like that's something for any social media manager to have in mind, especially sports when things can go wrong so quickly. And yeah, that was just cool to hear because I've never really thought about how important that might be to a role within sports. A lot of times it just seems like it's just business, but clearly it's a little bit more than that. She clearly cares about these athletes.
I
Have you all ever
also
gotten a hate comment? Sorry.
have I ever gotten a hate
I
comment?
feel like I've never gotten a hate comment. Like I leave hate
Not
not on like real posts. I don't leave hate comments on like real posts. Like on my friends and stuff, I will jokingly hate, but like I feel like I've never gotten like a hate comment on something. Because
I
I know it's
def
a big thing now. I see hate
yeah.
comments on like big posts and stuff.
yeah.
None of those are me. I swear.
No.
I feel like
I
I'm so like opposite of that. Like even if we lose, like contrary to I feel most like really big sports invested people, when they get really like they take it personally. Like a team
Yeah.
loses and they're like, "Wow, my life is over." And I'm like,
Hmm.
"Wait, guys, like what? Like it's okay. Like sure it sucked, but like it's okay. Like we the world kept spinning. The earth kept
Yeah,
spinning. Like
like
you're
with the
good."
whole to like kind of go into your point where it's like
Yeah.
personal. When Luke
Yeah.
like when I lived like I'm from Dallas, so me and my brother and my dad are huge like Dallas Mavericks fans.
Mm.
And so when Luca got traded, my brother's like, I cried that morning. Like, I can't believe I'm like, you're crying over a trade? Like, are you
Literally.
kidding? Like, you don't know the guy. Like,
Yeah.
wait, did you ask if we've left or gotten hate comments?
I've asked if you've
I think
gotten
she
one,
said
but
both.
Oh,
oh,
okay.
honestly,
I
yeah.
have. I have. Because in the summer I broadcast baseball. And so sometimes, and
Oh.
I live in a very like conservative town. They really don't like women. And so obviously like
Oh,
women in male
awesome.
fields. I've definitely gotten comments. I feel like something that's important there, and obviously I don't get as many as people like athletes who are there, but it's like one time I got one and then literally all the fans like started attacking the person who left the hate comment,
Oh,
which was
that's
funny.
funny.
But I that was honestly super refreshing because if you build up a base like that, I'm sure that feels similar for athletes having
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
type, especially since they
Defense,
have
like you're having people
100%
defend
more.
you.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
100%. But it definitely hurts my feelings every time. I get like one a summer that I think about when I go to bed. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad. But
Hey, that's
I've never
awful.
left one because I'm like, there's no reason for it, you know?
Yeah. I also think it kind of helps. Like, again, I'm not really emotionally invested into a single athlete ever. Like, I have the people that I'm a fan of, but even like going here and like you see these athletes like literally in your classes or like you pass them. I think it's also a little different because I work in athletics. So, like, to me, I see them so much more as people. Like, I don't watch their games on TV either, which I think is another thing. Like, if you're going to the games, and you're like there and these athletes are like basically right in front of you, it's easier to humanize them and be like, okay, yeah, they're real people. Like, and there's still people that are going to be at these games screaming mean things. But like in my head, I'm like, I feel like you see that they're a real person. Like when you're behind a screen, okay, like I can understand how like you think it's
Hmm.
not that I'm saying it's okay, but you can think it's
No,
more
yeah.
like fake. Like it's almost like they're acting, like they're in these roles as like their job is to perform. But like I feel like going here, it's like you see these people in your like, why would you be mean to somebody who's like struggling in your stats class just as you are?
Yeah.
Like you're struggling, they're struggling, and then on top of their those struggles, they're still, you know, going to a game and then hearing all this backlash from a game that they like obviously had control in, but like a lot of these outcomes are out of their control. Like they're not the sole like reason for
Yeah.
their losses. It's a team sport, it's a team thing, you
Hmm.
know? And so I
For
For
just
a
think it's
long
sure.
crazy.
for a long time, I feel like all my relationships are parasocial clearly. And then as you mentioned, I came here and it is,
Yeah.
I do feel like that's something I've just recently started to grasp is like they are human. They do have a personality and they're completely normal, just like we
Yeah.
are. But I do feel like, especially a super small town, nobody's ever came out of there ever, you know? And so it's like, then I really did think they were kind of just like robots living their life or like had like kind of the superiority complex, but
Right.
now clearly not the case, at least here. The athletes
Right.
are all super nice and
Yeah.
humble and things.
I just think, yeah, I think it's interesting in playing back into the like whole parasocial relationship because, and as like we've heard in class, like once you kind of have one interaction with them, it becomes like a, what was it?
Interpersonal,
Interpersonal,
interpersonal.
interpersonal relationship where like, and I feel like that's what it feels like with these athletes because it's like, okay, well, you're not just on my TV screen, you're literally right next to me in class. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I just think it's crazy. I think too much about it. Like, sometimes when I really think about it, I'm like, that's just crazy. Like, I just don't understand people who, like, their sole purpose in life is to be really upset when their team does poorly or their athlete doesn't perform to their standard. I'm like, and especially when it's like grown adults too, talking about like college athletes.
It's
Like,
one
Yeah.
thing if
that's
you're getting
crazy.
upset and you're sad, but it's a
Yeah.
whole other thing when you're like turning this into anger and taking it out on
Yeah.
these people who are probably much younger than you, more than likely.
Exactly.
They're like a solid 20 years and these old
Yeah.
men are commenting.
Literally. But anyways, well, now that we got that off our chest, I
Yeah.
feel like I just ranted instead of anyway. But all right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up.
Is
That
that
was
all?
awesome.
Abby, do you want to say anything else?
Awesome. All right,
Clip
well,
that, put that on the Instagram.
oh, it's going. Well, make sure to tune into our episode next time, and we're looking forward to having our next guest on here. All right,
Bye.
See you guys next time.